Monday. Today I would like to share with you a couple of stories related to the hymn, All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name. So our author today, his name is Reverend Edward Perrinet, and he was first a vicar in the Anglican Church, and then he allied himself with Charles and John Wesley, so he became a Methodist pastor for a while and was mentored by John. And then after some maybe disagreements, he went his separate way and he ended up pastoring a small church in Canterbury, where he died in 1792. So it wasn't until Edward's later years that he actually started writing hymns, and he wanted no credit for the lyrics that he wrote, and he chose to publish anonymously. And there was a series of small books where what he had penned was then published anonymously. Now, the text was first printed publicly in November of 1799, so that is 7 years after Edward Perrinet passes away. But it is published in the Gospel magazine, which is a publication by Rock of Ages composer Augustus Toplady. And at the time, that text was titled, On the Resurrection, the Lord is King. And even then, it appeared as anonymous. So I wanted to share a couple of stories. First, one about the author, Reverend Edward Perrinet, and then one about the hymn itself and just how impactful it was and is. So first, the story about Perrinet. And this just gives a little glimpse of who he was. So this is how it goes. Most famous of Edward's minister moments came when he was visiting John Wesley's church. John insisted that Edward take the pulpit during the visit, but Edward insisted otherwise. Edward, having grown up under the mentorship of John, thought himself far below the task. Both men stubbornly refused to accept each other's wishes, and it came to a climax that Sunday. John took the pulpit and proclaimed, "Now we will hear a message from Minister Edward." Edward was taken aback, but he gathered his thoughts quickly, took to the pulpit, and proclaimed, "I will now deliver the greatest sermon ever preached on earth." Edward opened his Bible, read the Sermon on the Mount, thanked the congregation for their time, then took his seat. So I thought that was funny. So he has a sense of humor, and of course he did pick the best sermon ever. So the next story is about the hymn itself, and it goes like this. A Reverend E.P. Scott, who was a missionary to India, wrote of trying to reach a savage tribe in the Indian subcontinent. Ignoring the pleadings of his friends, he set off into the dangerous territory. Several days later, he met a large party of warriors who surrounded him, their spears pointed at his heart. Expecting to die at any moment, Scott took out his violin, breathed a prayer, closed his eyes, and began singing, "All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall." And he goes on, he continues singing, and when he reached the words, "Let every kindred, every tribe," he opened his eyes, and there stood the warriors, some in tears, and every spear was lowered. Scott spent the next 2 years evangelizing that tribe. So I sure hope that's a true story. What a fabulous story of the power of God and the power of music. So when you hear this on Sunday, actually it's part of the offertory on Sunday. When you hear us singing a part of All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name, I hope you'll think back on that particular story and how meaningful and impactful this hymn is at evangelizing and bringing people to Christ. Hope you enjoyed the stories today. See you Sunday. Bye-bye.